it's news to me. My mother fell. She broke her neck. If the blame lay in her sluggish heart or in the bottle that she clutched, I was not told. Other than the tears I shed when I wrote her eulogy, I sit and wait the flood unsprung and wonder if the well is dry and what is wasted in my eyes. My brother died. Bloated in a rented bed, he gurgled when he drowned, without the coin to pay the gowned professionals who might have saved him. Other than a low escaping wail when that finality was nailed into my head, no rage has pricked my skin.
You're listening to Creativity Unconfined. Stay tuned to learn about how the arts unlock the doors for those who are imprisoned.
Welcome to yet another episode of Creativity Unconfined. I remain, as ever, Dave Gusak, the director for the Florida State University Institute for the Arts and Art Therapy with the Imprisoned. I can't tell you how excited I am to get an opportunity to sit down and speak with this incredible guest. He is prominent author and poet Jorge Antonio Renaud, who spent a total of 27 years in prison. And we're going to talk with him about his advocacy work, about what brought him into writing. I'm not going to spend any more time talking about it. I want to hear from him. Why go into all of this? Let's bring him on. Jorge, welcome so much to the show. Thank you for spending time with us today.
No, thank you for having me, man. Glad to be here today.
I have to say, we both have a mutual friend who was on the show earlier, Grady Hillman, who just spoke incessantly, wonderfully well about your work and about your poetry and about all the things that you've done. And he just basically said, you just got to get to know him. Just sit down and talk to Jorge. Well, here we are. So we're getting an opportunity to get to know each other in front of what I hope to be 72 million point three audience members. Very happy.
We can wish, yeah.
So tell me how we got here. How do we get to this moment? Tell us about your work and who you are.
Yeah, sure. I'm always a bit. I'm not sure where to start. We will tell you the story. Very quickly, if I cough or whatever, I've got a little bit of a bug. I'm not sure how. I was at an action last night, right? We co-hosted an action here in Austin against billionaire backers of hate. There's a guy named Joe Lonsdale, a billionaire who started Palantir, and we were down there in action last night. And a friend of mine came up and talked to me. He said his 2 kids were sick, but evidently he's a carrier, I guess. Got me a little bit sick, but I'm all right. Yeah, I just wanted to excuse.
How many of the billionaires got it? Did you pass it on to all the billionaires as well?
No, they wouldn't. They were like behind their fences and stuff. But we had an action going on. Us and Vocal Texas, Hands Off Center Texas, some of the organizations that we admire. Again, it's the ongoing campaign we're doing of pushing back against the billionaire backers of hate. Yesterday was the 2-year anniversary of a Supreme Court decision that basically allowed the homeless to be criminalized, to be put in jail for basically being homeless. And so we use that as an occasion to, anyways, it's kind of what I do, right? I'm an activist. I'm a prison abolitionist. I'm not I guess what I would call a professional poet in that I don't have an MFA. I don't have workshops. I've been in places where people start congregating about the workshop they've had, about all this other stuff. But I'm a social worker. I'm an ex-con. I'm a formerly incarcerated individual who has written poetry throughout his life. And a few years ago, was persuaded to go ahead and do a book. As in many things in my life, I've been pretty well assuming or not believing in myself or what I do. Because of, the way I grew up, whatever, outside forces, like going to prison, whatever, me putting a pistol to people's head. I don't think so. That's thing that normal people do. That's you have to be somewhat traumatized or damaged or something to do that. Yeah. Again, I'm not here to cast judgment or saying. I'm just telling you how I feel about myself.
Tell me about that. Tell me about what led you to that. You talk about you have to be traumatized to be able to then hold a gun to someone else's head. Can you give us a little background about that and give us a little context about where that's coming from?
Totally. But I will also say that you also have to be pretty damn selfish and greedy and be willing to jump over whatever societal boundaries we have between civilized individuals to do that. I'm an abolitionist, and I'm a firm believer in accountability, self-accountability, and remorse. And we can't always say the patriarchy pushed us into something, okay? Eventually, you have to say, I did this, and I'm responsible for this, and I'm responsible for the harm that this individual has felt, and it's up to that individual to decide how do I redress that, right? How do I make them whole again? Anyway, I was pretty normal, I think, up until I left the Army. I dropped out of high school in the 10th grade because I came from a family that was very, about the 4 or 5 years before I dropped out of school, we were on the road a lot. We were working in the fields, and we would start the semester a bit late. So as a result, in Texas, they track you, right? Or at least they did back then. And they would say that, well, of course, I couldn't handle AP classes. I couldn't handle the regular load, so I had to be put in what's basically just a step above special ed. And I'm somewhat intelligent, and I kind of rebelled at that. And in the 10th grade, I just said, "To hell with you all," and left. And I went to the Job Corps, and I got a GED. And I was 17, and I had my mother sign for me so I could go in the military. I was raised to be patriotic by my father. I was raised, America do or die. I did not know much about the colonization, the criminalization of individuals or groups or entire cultures that this country has pretty well built its foundation. I didn't know any of that. They would teach you that, when I was growing up. And I did not come from a family that did much about that. So anyway, I go in the military, stayed in the military 2 years, left. Mm-hmm. And one night I was drinking, and I had a girlfriend in in Texas, and I rolled up there and rolled through a stop sign. Cop pulled me over. I found out later that he had called ahead to the jail, to the county jail, not the city jail. Mm-hmm. He said, I'm bringing a guy in. I want you to put him up in this tank with a tank of men who had been already convicted and were waiting transfer to TDCJ. He threw me in there, and he told them to touch me up, evidently. And they did. They touched me up for a while, beat me down, beat me unconscious, raped me pretty well all night. I was in moments of lucidity, moments of not. Mm. They come and got me 3 a.m, threw me out. I didn't have my car anymore. I don't know who could I ask? This was 1977. January 1977, December 1976. Mm-hmm. And I was, didn't have cell phones, didn't have anywhere to go. So I walked 30 miles to Corpus Christi to the YMCA and had told them, and they put me on the bus back to Beeville, where I was living. And 2 weeks later, I went in and robbed the Church of Fried Chicken. I started an odyssey in prison from 77 through 2008. I spent 27 years in prison, 4.5 years out. Right? I was very violent when I went in. Yeah. Terrified that everybody knew I was a punk, Yeah. And because that's what it is. I was a punk. In fact, I was a boxer. I was strong. I was young. I didn't fight back the way a Chicano man should have. Or, I know it's bullshit, right? But that's what you tell your story, you tell yourself, right?
Sure. So
you become violent. And, I did 3 years on a 5, got out, spent 8 months out, went back with a 28-year sentence. All the time I'm going to college. All the time I'm going to school, right?
You going to school while you're inside?
Yeah. Yeah. And then they're fighting. I mean, I never got involved with a gang. My first stint, I was so violent, made such a rep for myself that later I had such an amount of respect for the rest of the time I was in the joint. And plus I would help people with the writing. I would write poetry for them. I would help them write, official paperwork. I would help them. I started learning. I worked in 2 different law libraries, and I started seeing the incredible amount of prosecutorial malfeasance and whatever that was going on in the state, and started listening to some of these guys who were saying, "I'm innocent. I didn't do this." Started opening my eyes to some of the things I didn't know. Started writing poetry, got published with a guy named Raul Salinas. I got published pretty well across the country and didn't really know what the hell I was doing, right?
Well, you were still inside while you were getting published?
Totally. I had not written poetry or tried to publish until I was incarcerated. This was my second stint between 80 and 87.
So tell me about...
That's when I made graded.
Yeah, I mean, okay. So tell me about that drive. I mean, you hadn't written before you got incarcerated. No. You hadn't written poetry before you were imprisoned. You're in prison. This is your second stint, 1981. You come across Grady Hillman. What was the drive? What was the impetus to say, yes, I can sit down and I want to write this?
I have no idea. I don't. I mean, I was familiar with some of the, I guess the modern poets, Charles Edgar Swinburne, from Hope and Fear Set Free. We Thanksgiving, whatever gods may be. The sing-song nature of iambic pentameter really pulled me in, right?
Okay.
The ability to say things in a way that was illuminating and different. And like Emily says, write it slant, right? Tell the truth, but tell it slant, I think captivated me, and I just started writing, and I wrote drivel like we all do when we start, I think. And I ended up sending stuff somewhere to get published, and I ended up getting something broadside of prison poetry up in New Hampshire, and I ended up buying a writer's market, and I started using that. And then Grady came, and I want to say it's 84 or something, and he did a workshop there on the Win Unit, and showed me what I didn't know. I've always been a writer, and like I was writing essays, I was writing op-eds, and I knew but I knew what I didn't know. Writing, writing essays. I didn't know anything about poetry. I was in love with E. Cummings, because it allowed me to do away with punctuation and break things up, right? Yeah, right. It's like but to be a really good poet, I think you have to know the formal stuff. You have to be able to write, villanelles. You have to be able to write quatrain. You have to be able to do that. You have to be able to do, iambic pentameter. But you have to be able to do that in a way that's fresh before you can just break all the rules and do whatever the hell you don't want to do.
Right.
And I didn't really know that. And Grady, bless his heart, showed me a lot of that, as did my future wife, who came in to teach. She was the city editor of the Huntsville Item, of the local paper, and she had a master's degree, an MFA from Oklahoma State University, and she came in to teach a class, and we ended up getting married after I got out, and right at the end of my sentence. But and I don't know what compelled me to write, other than I had time, I had a pen, I had paper, I thought I had something to say. Whether or not anybody cared what I had to say, I didn't really care.
So it wasn't for other people; it was for you to express.
Not really. I try to publish because I was mercenary, because I'm arrogant, and I feel that I would see how our organization would pay. In my last sentence, with Penn International, New York, right? The Penn writing program for prisoners. Yeah, I used to hit them up. I figured $200 or $300 a year, I was going to win 2 or 3 awards. I was arrogant as hell. That does not mean that I was writing for that, but I would write and think I can publish this. Never really thinking it was really good, but what the hell?
How was that? And just as a notation, as a footnote here, Grady Hillman, who taught those classes inside, Grady was on an earlier episode with his wife Mandy Gardner. So I just wanted to let the listener know that if you want to get a context of where this all came from, this is. Grady Hillman is just an amazing being, an amazing person.
He is great.
We hold him up as the standard of what the arts inside can be. As you're doing this, as you're writing, how did this work within conjunction of what your image was inside, your perception inside, other people's perception of you? How was this received by others?
It's a great question. I think prison might be the only place where, in American society, I think by and large, a poet is effeminate. The college professor, maybe, with leather sleeves and.
Hey, I have leather sleeves. I'm just putting that out.
Well, there. That's there you go. That has long hair. That maybe preys on younger women. Does a lot of stuff. So you would think that in prison that image would be multiplied, but it's not.
Okay.
A guy who can, I think you can look at revolutionary cadres around the world, especially like in South America and in the communist bloc. Poets are revered. People who can write are revered because they're eloquent. They're eloquent even on the yard or on the mountaintops or on the city walls of walls of cities that are either that they're conquering or that have been conquered, and they shout defiance, are always revered by warriors and stuff. They're saying the things that we can't say.
Yeah.
And I have no idea if there's any validity at all in that. But I thought about that because I was publishing poetry, and I would make money sometimes by guys that I would tell them, they'd come to me and they'd want to write a poem for their daughter or their wife or something. And what they knew of poetry was very much, very light, bright, in rhyme, type of, didactic, pedantic crap. I mean, I'm sorry. That's kind of the way I'm pretty. That's kind of the way. If it's predictable, I don't think it's good. But I would try things out on them, and they were cool when I would read it to them because I think poetry said aloud, right?
Right.
Creates a mood that them just reading, and a lot of these guys maybe couldn't read well, which is why they asked me to do that. I had a rep that's a guy who would what we call parejo, which is across the board, even-handed. That I didn't care who you're with or black, white. I was in Texas, not like other joints, other states that the racial boundaries were very distinct. In Texas, you can do that. And I would learn stuff. Yeah. So I was pretty well received. And then I was going to college and in and out of trouble with the officials because it was pretty well known that I was in a relationship with a local white woman who was part of the power structure in town. So they would harass me, they would mess with me, they'd come wake me up in the middle of the night, which is why I wrote. Do you mind if I read a poem?
I would love if you were to read a poem, especially if it captures what you're trying to describe now.
I think it does. Because they would tell me, they would take books away from me, right? I started to become quote unquote woke by reading Bury My Heart in Wounded Knee.
Brilliant book.
And Lamentation for Literature. We will not read this book unless you drive by and hurl it over the fence and we run under the red eye of the cameras, unseen by the guards asleep in their towers, dreaming of the arc of bullets tumbling through the air as inmates flee into the bleeding horizon. We will not read this book because the censors squatting in the mailroom, their thighs chafed by the stench of their suspicion, will chew and spit the pages into the trash, to burn with other slash the dictionary lies, all lies unfit for rehabilitation. We will not read this book because it will very likely speak of possibilities beyond the borders of bricks, of probabilities without accounting for iron, of impossibilities outside the shrinking circle of hope. We will not read this book. It will not whisper its histories to us. We will not listen to its secrets, be seduced by its sweet mysteries, compelled to arise, revolt, question, accuse, desire, confess, dream, love, die. We will not read this book. So, that's it's, the internal stuff I had going on was, you see yourself, you want to see yourself as a good person.
Yeah.
I'm yet to accept or externalize or talk about what had been done to me, when I left the army, in sin. So I'm struggling to, why is quote unquote a good person, a man that this woman is falling in love to, a straight woman from, is she in love with the image? And what do I have to offer anybody, right? What? So that's the kind of stuff I was struggling with. That's the kind of stuff that I was putting a lot of poetry. They did a movie, Lions, Parakeets, and Other Prisoners over there, which is kind of cool. Grady was part of a movie that they did there about incarcerated writers.
Right.
Yeah, that was a part of that, but that was cool. Yeah.
And you were in that. And so it's a very powerful poem. And I think it captures what you're experiencing so much better than just trying to explain to somebody.
Yeah.
There's a tension that you're describing in that poem that's not often communicated, or is difficult to communicate. And here you are reconciling what you described as your own aggressive image and this masculinity, toxic masculinity that exists inside, and you're capturing it in this poem that's communicating to others what the struggles are and how you're working against a system that doesn't want to celebrate the written word like that.
Yeah, and yet there's, one of the things that I do, and we'll talk more about, because I went back again and spent 17 years in, and before I got out, I thought I was going to die in a joint. was my reluctance, my active resistance against the glamorization of the convict. Right?
Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, there is just that. I mean, I'm an abolitionist, and one of the poems that almost close to my book, I think, I talk about my brother, that he's my brother too, about a guy who's writing on the wall in various shades of shit, right? He's not Tukey. You know, the founder of the Crips, who was in California, and it was a huge movement to get him off death row, even though the guy had admittedly killed quite a few people, right? But he was big, he was black, he was muscular, he was eloquent, right? There's a glamorization of individuals who were incarcerated by people who hate, a lot of it, I think, by white neoliberals who hate the system and are basically the backbone of the prison abolition movement, other than the convicts who come to the system, right? And what they do is, again, what I said earlier about it's all the patriarchy. You're in there because the patriarchy has limited your options, right? But you're really a good, cool, gentle soul of this other shit. When a bunch of us, dude, first time I went down, maybe the second time I went down, right? I was still seething from this rage, this terror, whatever. But the last time I went down, I was paroled in 1987.
Right.
I went to work in the back shop of the newspaper. I got in J school at San Diego State University, moved to Austin, became a hot young poet there, worked at the Austin American-Statesman, worked as a copy editor, covered the Dallas Cowboys, covered the Houston Oilers, the training camp, was given the first Chicano copy editor at the Austin American-Statesman, and still fell back in the dope and went and robbed people and put a pistol in people's head and went back to prison with a 6-year sentence. And I had option to go into therapy, I had whatever, I had all these things, right? So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh my God, the white folks made me do it, right? It was my unwillingness to face what had happened to me and say, I need therapy. I need to talk to y'all. I need to do something. And instead rely on the old, let me fantasize with dope. And if I can't afford it anymore, then let me go get some money, right? So the glamorization of the convict is something that I see a lot, as opposed to what I think is that should be, which is the vilification of the prison industrial complex, right? It's two different things, right?
Right.
And the prison industrial complex, yes, very much relies on the commodification of the individuals who were there, right? By the companies, not the CCAs and the MTCs of the world, but the securists, right, on the phone and all these other, and the Citibank that takes a bite out of everybody's debit card when they get out the joint, right? And I think that we have to resist that. We have to resist the glamorization. People want to glamorize this. No, don't glamorize this. Don't demonize us. Just humanize it. We're just humans.
Okay.
We're humans who have done things. A lot of us haven't done things, but a lot of us have done things repeatedly, right? Because we're unwilling to seek the assistance, or as poor as it is, as limited as it is, it's after for us to deal with the trauma that we've undergone. And I'm sorry, I didn't get.
No. Don't apologize.
What I believe.
I'm following so much here, and I want to get into some more of your poetry, particularly at the different stages that you were all throughout these different stages. You're out of, so you parole. You're in 87. You're out of prison for how long?
4 years. I was out right at 4 years. I was released in December of 1987. I was reconvicted in November of 1991.
And did you get involved with your wife then, or did that come later?
Lisa and I married while I was still incarcerated in 1986.
Okay.
So when I got out, I paroled to her there in Huntsville. And she had just been promoted to editor, and the paper was bought by an international conglomerate, so she couldn't do the things she wanted to do. So she looked for another job, and she got one in Austin, right at the Austin American-Statesman. So we moved to Austin, which was where I fell out of, the second time.
And you went in for 17 years at this point, or 16 years?
Yeah, and at this point, I've done 3 years on a 5, and I've done 7.5 on a 28, right? And then I'm out in 88. We moved to Austin. In 87, I get out and we're in Huntsville. I moved to Austin in 88. I enrolled at UT. I become I go freelance at the Austin American-Statesman where she's working. And in 1990, our daughter was born, Catalina, right? So they offered me a full-time job at the Austin American-Statesman. as a copy editor, and I take it. They know my history. But again, I'm a sociable dude. I speak well. They assume, and I assume, that we dealt with whatever it was that drove me. And I obviously haven't. And I think what it was when I was a freelancer, a correspondent, a poet, and all this stuff, and still married, I had all these things to cover up for my deficiencies. And in 90, I divorced, in late 90, Lisa and I divorced. I get moved from the correspondent to the copy desk. I get my own apartment. I'm by myself, and I get back into my head, right? Okay. And of course, I'm a piece of shit. I don't deserve anything. I don't deserve love. I don't deserve anything. So I allow myself, it's just an excuse to use, man. It's an excuse to fucking use. So I went out and used again, and I went out robbing again, and I get arrested in 1991 and sent back to prison with a 60-year sentence.
Were you writing at this time? Were you writing your own poetry for your own reasons during those years that you were out?
Some, but more than anything, I was reading. There was a guy named Raul Salinas who started Resistencia Books here in Austin. And he wrote East of the Freeway. He's probably the most famous poet, Chicano poet to come out of Austin. And he was also formerly incarcerated. And he started something called Save Our Youth, Soy. Mm-hmm. And he took me like under his wing. And my book was going to be the first book published under his press, Red Salmon Arts. And the city gave us $1,500 to do it, but we had to have matching funds. So we have a fundraiser. We raised more than enough money. He gives it to me to hold, and I fuck it off and go back to prison. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think I'm gonna die in the jail.
Were you able to speak with him after you were arrested? No.
He didn't. He died just before I got out in 08. And he wrote me a letter. There was no animosity he had. He just knew that I had to find my way, I think. And again, I thought I was going to die in prison. My third time down for aggravated robbery in Texas.
Right.
And I had to do 15 flat before I came up for parole. Right. So.
And you were writing, though. You started writing again.
Oh yeah, I was still writing. I was. My poetry took a different turn.
Can you give me an example of one of the pieces you wrote?
Yeah, sure. I'm starting to address what the place is doing to me. It's news to me. My mother fell and she broke her neck. If the blame lay in her sluggish heart or in the bottle that she clutched, I was not told. Other than the tears I shed when I wrote her eulogy, I sit and wait the flood unsprung and wonder if the well is dry and what is wasted in my eyes. My brother died. Bloated in a rented bed, he gurgled when he drowned, without the coin to pay the gowned professionals who might have saved him. Other than a low escaping wail when that finality was nailed into my head, no rage has pricked my skin. If I mourn unceasingly, it comes as news to me. My body grows and grows, has crawled and walks and sprints unaided now without my guiding hand. If that racked me once, if that cracked my shell and spilled humanity upon the concrete floor, it moves me little now. What does this place to me? If I can just read one more, because what I saw, what prison was doing through 27 years of iron, all my thoughts came back to me in pieces. Gutted as they struggled to climb wire, erected around walls, a cocoon up over my head, and sent my thoughts back to me in pieces, and everything was echoing. Misery comes cheap when there's 4 feet of wall, 3 sets of fences, 15 bars, and a 5-foot wide electronic lock and door between you and the road. Despair drops its vicious veil and opens immediacy when you have to say I love you to reinforce chicken wire. And love itself is lost in the night when you sit hunched over your flagging cock and you strain to inseminate your socks one more time. This for the boy's blood in the drain and knees on the bricks and the steam and the floor that screams in the wet as he crawled. And the boy whose teeth in the grass and mud and his mouth in the rain as he begged and his arm sharply cracked as he curled. And the boy whose hands gripped the bars, his eyes gleaming white as comb down his thighs and his breath finally blew and his muscles unclenched and he dreamed. And the boy when black went to blue and back in his cell as a key in the dark, and the dark came and fell, hummed to the knot in the sheet that he tied and he sang to himself as he carefully died. I started looking at what prison was doing to people.
Yeah.
I realized that, okay, yeah, it's cool. Okay, accountability is great. Yeah, I mean, prison, all this shit. But what is this place doing to folks? And when it comes to accountability and, you know, and existentialism and are we getting what we deserve and who's in there and who's what, and being a law librarian and helping folks with their cases, and kind of made me an abolitionist, you know.
Yeah.
And I started writing about the system from a Chicano perspective, and I started writing a lot of essays. And I figured that I was going to die in the joint because I had, again, a 60-year sentence, third time down for robbery. And I figured I could be a dignified individual when I was walking, you know, in prison. So I just started helping folks as much as I could, and I started being an activist, organizing people while I was in prison.
While you were inside.
Yeah.
And you're writing essays, you're writing poems that are so much more blatantly blatant. I mean, they're blatant, so much more so than the previous one, the first one that you read, which was symbolic, and there was they're just direct, and these are very clear. The despair that one would experience inside, just the way you're reading them, kind of conveys that despair. As you're becoming an activist inside, how is that being received by the system?
In 1999, there's a prison newspaper called The Echo, right? One of only maybe 6-7 prison newspapers remaining around the country. They took me to the Walls unit to be on the prison newspaper. And I don't think, while I was engaged in sporadic battles with administration over me getting paid for my poetry, right?
Yeah.
Because they would say that you're operating a business, and they try to give me, you know, and they try to give me disciplinary cases. When I got to the Walls unit and started writing for the Echo, right, and started putting out stories about looking at people who they were assigning to administrative segregation who were mentally ill, or when I looked at a institutional lockdown that locked the whole system down for 2 weeks in 2000 or something, that's when they really started taking note. And I told the person who was running the newspaper, a good woman who's from New York, who I paroled to, in fact, a friend of mine, that they were going to close the paper down, and they did. They closed the paper down in 2001. They scattered us. They scattered the 4 of us across the state, and I thought that was sure enough the death knell for me. That I was going to, you know, spend my life in prison. Yeah. But there's a lot of like mythology out there as to why they let me go. Right? Again, because but they let me go on my second parole. I came up in 2007 and gave me a year set off, and in 08 they let me go. And some of it is that they were tired of dealing with me. They were tired of me writing grievances. They were tired of me writing essays in newspapers. They were tired of hearing my voice. There's a great article done by a now defunct newspaper in Houston, the Houston Press, that they talked about me at the paper. And they quote a guy named Glenn Castleberry, who was a PIO, public information officer, who said Jorge needs to remember he doesn't sit at the policy table for TDCJ. Which I thought was great. I thought that was incredible. But and ironically, a couple of years later, when I was hired as a policy analyst at Texas Criminal Justice Coalition, I was sure enough at the policy table with the executive director and the of TDCJ looking at policy. Strange, like works in weird ways, man. Yeah.
So, I mean, this must have been around 2008 or 2009 that you got paroled again?
Yes, I was paroled in 08. Again, in July 2nd, 08, I was released.
And you were surprised?
Oh, totally. I in no way thought that they were going to let me go. I had pulled enough strings, friends, I had people to get me to the Ramsey unit, which was the only unit, there's 2 units in TDCJ that have, because what I had done was they had shipped me off the Walls unit when they closed the paper down, right? They were mad at me. They shipped me off to West Texas. Well, I pulled strings, or friends brought me back because I was in the middle of college. And I hadn't done anything to get me out of college, right? I hadn't broken any rules or anything. I was just writing things that they didn't want me to write. So they brought me back to the Walls unit. I finished college. They shipped me to the Kofi unit that has no college whatsoever. and I was just basically, I was dying there. I was, I was deteriorating mentally. It was a very violent, very ugly unit, and I got transferred to the Ramsey unit, which actually has a master's program. And so I enrolled in the master's program there at the Ramsey unit. So I was at least getting some mental, some intellectual stimulation, right, and collaboration and friendship among men and professors who were still involved in this whole, prisoners are human and they still deserve to be educated and that sort of belief, right? So at the Ramsey, so I kind of set it up for if you keep me around because I knew I was coming pro, but I really, 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 really did not think they were going to let me out. So.
And you still don't know why they released you, except that you're surmising that basically they thought it was safer for you to be outside pissing in than inside pissing out.
That's a great way to put it, and I don't know. Might be. That's a good way to put it. Because while I was inside, the thing that probably prison officials across the country, everywhere, fear most is organizing inside the system. They don't want, and Texas has like 100 units, right? There's 100 TDCJ units scattered across the state, and they surely did not want anybody talking to each other and organizing folks and trying to set up strikes or anything like that. And it's like, yeah, and it's like, I had a lot of respect, right? I had a lot of respect, not only from the gang members who were incarcerated, but from people just across the system because of things that I've been writing and how I've been addressing things that they knew were going on, things that they knew were happening, but that no one had ever talked about.
Before we get into the next part of your life, where you're now outside, still advocating for abolitionist perspectives, was there, and I don't know the answer to this, is there a poem or something you could read that you feel captures that transition again for that parole, or what it's like to?
Yeah, actually, it was about my return, about my return to the free world of my fears, right? 12th and Chigon. 12th and Chigon is a corner here in Austin that was very much full of like an open air drug market for a long time, right? And I was living right down the street from that. I was going to school in grad school, but I was living right down the street.
Okay.
12th and Chigon. My dreams, like spider webs, stick to my skull. They follow me until the flame of the sun burns them away. In my dreams, it still squeezes me. And it's always that moment between daylight and darkness as the guards count us from the corners of their eyes, their iron sticks clanging off the bars. The howls of the dying echo down the hallways of my mind, breathing a different air than anyone else in the world as I lie there curled around my memories. In the end, I cannot say if I'm dreaming or dead. I leave the laundromat, my shirts and socks steamed and clean, stuffed into my bag. I pull my clothes down, Chicon, one ungloved hand I cannot feel because of the cold stuffed in my pocket. The other tugging the wheel, cheap suitcase over the cracked sidewalk toward the rented room I call home. As I near the corner of 12th and Chicon, I hear the whispers of the sellers, the dealers, the buyers, the lost. Hey, I say, you looking for something? Homie, over here. A woman grabs my hand, her eyes the color of a flamingo's wings. She sees something in mine I long ago lost. Hey, honey, you looking to get warm? I touch her face and she stops talking, her trembling fingers moving up my arm. She turns her neck into my hand and moves closer, and I walk on, my passing lit by the pipes as they flare in the alleys, the lighters flicking in manic succession, the smoke crystallizing as it curls into the cold air. The gulp of scabby lips and dried, gasping, desperate throats retching and reaching for another, for just one more, for the hit that'll drown the sound of the tin cans rattling around their feet, the rasping coughs bouncing between the decaying bricks of the buildings, the paper fluttering and then the freezing breeze. For one moment, I stop on 12th Street, my heart twitching as I yearn for the remembered heat of the needle. As it slid under my skin, the sly lying cocaine burning my blood as it sang its desperate song, the memories rushing like water frothing down the hillsides of a distant dying country. I turn back to the corner, I look, and I listen. Then rising like steam from the culverts cut into the curbs, I hear voices. Not of the addicts with crusty eyes, or the dealers glinting and draped in gold, or the shamed suburban users hunched in their idling cars, but the voices of love rushing to me as if heeding my reckless need. I feel the hugs and the lips and the caresses of those who have hugged and kissed and caressed me without question, without asking for anything in return. Of the people who gently welcome me home, I turn and I walk away. My dreams are made of wire. I find my way through them, and as I struggle free, I hear the fading screams of a brother burned without grace, of my mother with her Indian eyes, of that woman with shining hair and her songs of the morning. I hear them scream to me, not sure if in greeting or goodbye. It's kind of a long one, but it's kind of a welcome home, right?
I was going to ask you what allowed you to walk past the drug dealers, walk past the prostitutes, and find your own solace, your own drive, and you just answered it.
Yeah. I'm not my best self. What was that led you to finally have the will of? And also, when I wrote that poem, I got involved in circle keeping, which is the restorative justice methods that are used by the indigenous, right? When it comes to healing circles, right?
Yeah.
Restorative justice circles based on healing, based on sitting there and passing a talking piece, and I was able to say that I had been raped, and I came to the attention of the Texas Association Against Sexual Assault. Mm-hmm. That kind of used me and had my face on buses and stuff. And I was more in peace with what had been done to me and saying that, okay, then how could a guy who's basically good, what has been done to him, how much trauma has he felt that he had to look for something else, something outside of himself that he wasn't able to, to do for him. Yeah, It's been a struggle, but yeah.
Well, it's been 17 years.
18 years. Yeah.
18 years. Okay. And so it is a struggle, but it's a struggle you've been winning.
I've been winning in ways that, okay. Yes. To address that.
Yeah.
I got out, I ended up getting a master's degree in School of Social Work at UT. I worked as a policy analyst, Texas Criminal Justice Coalition, writing legislation that had a direct impact on individuals who've been incarcerated. I ended up becoming a community organizer. I became the National Criminal Justice Director for a group called Latino Justice. I won in those ways. I am not in contact with my daughter. I have had moments when I've been on the cusp of going back, doing things that would have gotten me back to prison. So to say that everything has been fucking hunky dory and just, great is not true. I mean, whatever it was that I'm in therapy, right? And whatever it was, I think that made me feel that I was lesser, that I was not worthy of attention or whatever, sometimes still kind of bedevil me. The book, it took me a long time to write the book because I didn't think that my poetry was worthy. I've come to realize that I've written some poetry that is damn good. Some poetry that can stand with pretty well anything anybody else that's not only come out the joint, has been writing in the last 5 or 6 years in this country, that I've written some damn good poetry. But it took me a minute to get to that, right? It took me a minute to say, people are, again, glamorizing who you are, doing this, whatever. It's a process. As anyone who's been in prison a long time will tell you, it's a process to leave that behind. I've succeeded in some ways, and I know my place in the community of the formerly incarcerated in this country, in Austin, in Central Texas, and nationally. As a Chicano, I know, I think the stature that I hold, none of that means that I'm still a hit away from going back to prison for the rest of my life. I'm on parole to 2051.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there, knowing that you're not in contact with your daughter, knowing that you're still going through these struggles and these ongoing tugs of war, is there a particular poem that you would love to read right now, that if you knew that either your daughter was listening or the world at large was listening, that was really paying attention to what you think you would want them to hear about you right now, what poem would that be?
Good question. I normally don't write for others. I write. I wrote one time that I think it's called "Sending the Needles," and I can read that. And it has to do with. I was asked by someone who was bless her heart, rest in peace, Belle Chevalier, and she asked me to write a poem about execution, right? About capital punishment, and I told her I tended to focus on prison or my personal life or whatever, but the thing about writing about capital punishment was that what I saw it as a movement that was kind of sexy. They thought it was sexy, and if you get somebody off death row and now they're doing 45 years in prison, are you going to support them for the 45 years, or are you just going to move on to the next guy, right? So I think it pretty well captures the way I feel about, okay, sending the needles. I have no grand words for you. Nothing noble from the rough coast of exile. Just our coughs, low and discreet, and the squeaks as the gurneys glide past, piled high with the property debt. What eloquence do you seek? What gospel of mine could ring its melancholy bell enough to bring them jangling by, belt sagging with your weight, chrome keys held just so to soothe my buzz and whine? Look, the rains quit cooling long ago, and yet you peel away your silks and dance for clouds. Hand in hand you whirl and step as if you still wore flowers in your hair, as if your chance still mattered, as if they ever did. The scent of powder and fire and fuse, the fall of hammer, bang and boom, the clink of mortar, more and more, it's all they've ever known. We love in dreams and slip through nights, our blood exultant. We leave our flesh upon the wire, the scab still weeping when we wake. We are mad in legions, insects in our skulls. What do? Slice squares to iron. Enough to push the pills on through, enough to peer at what lies huddled here. We dull. 10 times 10 times 10, and again times 2, and still they see no need to feed our eyes. We are speechless, ranks upon ranks. Our tongues are broken. We cannot speak of pain. It fills the world, and yet you dance. Muteness has a fine appeal. Tear out each other's throats. You'll see it makes for strangled cries. Send in the needles. There are worse ways to die. And it's not pretty. It's not a pretty poem. I think what it is, it says, you've forgotten about us and we have to make our own way. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with making my own way among the ranks of the formerly incarcerated. I'm okay that that's my community. I'm okay with asserting our humanity. I'm okay with saying, with the struggle to have the formerly incarcerated accept us all as equal. It's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
But I really believe that society in general, by all the gains that we made and whatever, to try to have us seem equal or whatever, were done away by the last presidential campaign, when the Democrats decided to say, he's a felon, are you going to vote for him? And that diminished every fucking gain that we've won over the last 15 or 20 years. Because we had got to the point where we said the felon doesn't define us. What defines us who we are and our possibilities, and that we're all capable of redemption of what we're doing since. I mean, it's not like there weren't enough negatives that you could, do. You had to go to felon. So yeah, it's like.
So it's still the label.
Yeah.
It's still the label that defines someone.
Yeah.
As we wrap this up, that's a heavy message. As we wrap this up, what gives you hope as you move forward and as you continue to fight this fight? Because you're fighting the fight and you're using your words to do it. What gives you that hope?
It's a good question. I'm basically an optimistic dude. But I am. I mean, I'm resilient as hell. There's a whole Middle Eastern tale about a pony being buried under a pile of shit, and the little kid digging under the shit, saying it's probably there somewhere, And I'm not telling it right, but
I know the story.
Yeah, the games that we had up to about 2017, 2018, 2019 have almost been yanked back. The immigration fight has almost taken center stage because of the violence and the way that the current administration in Texas and nationally have used the backs of the bodies of immigrants to try to climb the hills of political power. And I'm okay with that. I think that they have much more empathy than individuals who are in the CJ movement, right? And I'm okay with devoting time to that because a person turning the key does not give a damn what the person did to get in there. They're just turning the key.
Yeah.
I'm okay with fighting the hand that turns the key. Okay. And it doesn't have to be for people who've been convicted of criminal offenses or people who are being there in detention, because they crossed the border or whatever. All I know is that I'm in the struggle. I'm in the struggle to try to humanize individuals who have been dehumanized, and yeah, that's kind of what I do. That's what I do.
Good.
So I'm okay with it.
I think that's the message that should come out of this. And the reality is your poems and your writing has taken a two-dimensional form and created a three-dimensional being. And I think that's what we try to underscore. Okay. Jorge, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this conversation, how much I've learned from you. Your poetry is rich. I know that your book is available on Amazon.
Is it the poetry? I don't know. I think maybe the one available on Amazon is the other book I wrote, the Behind the Walls.
Behind the Wall is available on.
Yeah, that one's available on Amazon. The poetry book is available on Plancha Press.
Plancha, okay.
Plancha Press, yeah.
That's right.
That's the rest is about it. That's the book of poetry.
Okay, so I have that. I have that written down. You'd think I'd be better educated, but I do know that your memoir is available on Amazon. Your poetry is available on Plancha Press. You've received lots of recognition for your poetry and your writing, and I think that is the way to reach people and to connect with people, and I think you're doing just that. I think you give a lot of hope, even as you say, tongue-in-cheek, you say you're an optimistic person. You very much are. I think the poetry underscores the pain that you came through to be able to tell those stories, and I think that's what's brilliant.
Sure.
I appreciate you. I appreciate your message.
Poetry, yeah. I don't write pretty poetry. I'm sorry, but yeah,
It
cuts right to the quick. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Sydney. Thank you, Grady. Thank all of them.
Creativity Unconfined has been brought to you by Florida State University's Institute for Arts and Art Therapy with the Imprisoned. Special thanks to our producers Sydney Nichols and Malia Burrows, as well as Florida State University's College of Fine Arts. If you like what you heard, and even if you didn't, please support us by liking and subscribing.